I even opened my hair for you. Like, I wanted to play like Serbian Aragorn or something.
You would look really good in a circlet. That would actually look badass.
In a what?
A circlet, the type of crown that he wore with the central jewel in the center.
Oh, no. You mean like the Conan type crown?
Yeah.
Oh my God, no, not at all. Not with a forehead like this.
Well, that helps mask the forehead real estate that you and I already have. I'm bald. Yeah. You've got it better than I do. So.
Well, I'm never gonna lose this hair. I think it's genetic, dude. Like, it just doesn't want to go away. I'm 44 now, and I still look okay. Like,
that's good for you. I mean, it is your monster hair after all.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, you did your research. Oh my shit. Awesome.
Not only did I do my research, this is not Russian, but this is a little bit of rum, and it's just now 12 p.m. in the central United States. So cheers.
Oh my God, I envy you so much. I was running around the last 12 days with a really bad bronchitis, and I just stayed away from drinking because I wanted to heal it out because I have to fly to Valencia next week. So I just wanted to make sure that I come there, get there completely healthy, so I can just get fully blasted and hammered over there.
Perfect.
So I won't be joining you on the alcohol binge tonight.
Well, that's all right. You put in the hard work early, so it'll pay off down the road. I understand.
But maybe tomorrow during spoiler night.
So I sent you that email, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you. First of all, thank you for taking time out of your day. I appreciate that. Welcome, dear listeners, to this very special episode of Echoes of Eshaton. I'm so excited about the opportunity to chat with this person, and I think he'd agree that this alignment of the stars cannot be ignored. From beginnings in rural Germany, selling hand-drawn art in comic book stores, to designing artwork for entertainment giants like Riot Games and League of Legends, his mythos and exploits may have outgrown even the likes of Fallberg and Diamondall. He's gained infamy for his Marvel illustrations and art book compilations. He's smoked like a chimney over many sleepless nights building his studio, SixMoreVodka, now entering its 13th year of operation. He leads a close-knit team of artistic powerhouses as the studio's creative director, and is at the helm of the successful free-to-play post-apocalyptic IP Degenesis and associated projects. Conventional deadlifter, He-Man cartoon fanatic, Russian vodka connoisseur because Polish tastes like ass, and fiercely loyal friend to the Degenesis community and artists worldwide, the exalted Marko Djurdjevic. Welcome to Echoes of Eshaton.
Oh my God, what an introduction. It was better than any journalist ever writing a write-up or a biography on me.
That was my goal. I just wanted to do a little bit of research for you.
No. It was really good. It was very, very well done.
So
I'm impressed.
Thank you. And I hope this next question kind of follows that impressive train by helping expand your mind a little bit, because this is something that I've been thinking about since I first picked up Degenesis in 2019 at Gen Con in Indianapolis. That's where I got this may have been a sales technique. I don't remember who was working the booth, but they said, "Oh, this is the last GM screen, the one with Fallberg on it. So you're going to want to grab this one. This is the last GM screen." So I did want to ask you. You and Christian Gunther created the Degenesis IP from scratch in a garage, and your influences for it span a large breadth of literature and cinema, Mad Max, Conan the Barbarian, like you said earlier, the Dune book series and more, the comics From Hell and Akira, just to name a few. When you think about the landscape of TTRPGs in general, from your time growing up to the conception of Degenesis with Christian, what are some things you did not want to do with this IP?
Well, it's pretty simple, man. Like, I really think when it comes down to making decisions on what inspires you and what kind of things you want to have your game be influenced by, you have to look at the things that you truly love outside of the realm of tabletop RPGs. Like, I always missed the most to never see a hero who's battling alcoholism, or somebody who is just depressed of never ever finding an opponent that, can be his proper match. I really think there's like so many human stories that are completely neglected in TTRPGs, and they keep RPGs relatively hollow and shallow. It's almost like every game coming out is just like focusing in so hard on the escapism and trying to give people the tools just to run away and make everything some type of player empowerment. And I just don't think life is reflected very well in that respect. Like, I do think life is a lot about losing control and not being in charge and handling the challenge of, staying on target with whatever comes your way. And I really wanted that to be the focus or the core element of the IP, and not the player empowerment, not the idea of like everybody's getting like some bonus points for just being part of the game,
Just
like
being present, right?
exactly. I don't believe in experience through omission. It's like not something that is very active. It's a very passive way of playing and enjoying or consuming entertainment in general.
And I agree with that. I mean, I think that translates directly, that analog to your XP system in Degenesis.
Yeah.
Some people might call it stingy. I call it, I think it leans on a lot more of the milestone of experience. Like battle after battle, this is going to take a toll on your very human character. It is the humans versus basically everybody else in these type of, conflicts, these type of conflicts. And so I did want to follow up on that, because that's a great segue to my next question. This type of slice of life realism that is missing from a lot of the escapism that people really try to jam themselves into. And people are free to enjoy what they want, but I did want to ask you in terms of world building. In a 2017 live art stream with YouTube user Evil Jar, you said in regards to world building, sometimes it's much easier to go with a simple story and just explain it through the eyes of the character. Mm-hmm. Develop the world on the fly, as if you're witnessing everything that very moment through the character's eyes.
Yeah.
So is this still a process of world building for you in your extended projects, or are their first drafts based almost entirely on that sort of streams of consciousness mindset?
I mean, absolutely. You have to take every character's vantage point during the process of writing anything. Like, you need to be able to jump into their vision, like witness the world from their perspective, to be able to reflect on what is happening to them in any sort of way that is meaningful. Like if everybody acts the same, or if everything is predetermined, then like there's no real discovery for the plot to develop or the world to be built.
The stakes will remain low, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. And I do want to come back to like the one thing that I find absolutely crucial, and I've seen this come up a lot of times. I mean, there's a process called, the effect of diminishing returns, where the more you put in, the less you get out. And me being a recreational power lifter, know that very well. Like the experience that you gain in the first couple of months might get your lift up really quickly, but as soon as you are reaching a certain bodily limit, you will start plateauing. And this is absolutely normal. It's normal for any body type and any type of genetics. There will come a point where you put in more than you get out, so like life is not a linear progression. It is just like going into eternity, and you just become better and better at everything the more you do it. Like, you will eventually plateau. And I think Degenesis, especially the experience system and the way we set up the world and the way characters interact with the world, is very much about like hitting those limitations and seeing that, like, you can't be everywhere at once. You can't solve every problem at the same time. You can't like even save the world sometimes. Sometimes it's just about saving your ass and getting out of there and avoiding the conflict rather than searching it.
And you talked about empowerment. I think the real most empowering things, or the most empowering parts of TTRPGs as I've experienced them, because I started playing in 2019. I picked up Degenesis, D&D 5e, and I think it was a pre-starter of the game Cities of Mist.
Yeah.
And the ones that, or not the systems that had it, but the systems that really encourage that RP mode of play, to where you're going to have to dig yourself, out of your own hole a lot of the time. And, it's great saving kingdoms and realms, but at what cost? You lose that sort of sense of scope, when you boil it down to the very essence, to that human interpersonal conflict. That's brought me the most joy out of anything. The first D&D 5e game I played, it was Ravenloft, set in the Ravenloft setting. And I was a dwarf. I had my beard grown out at the time. I can grow a fairly big red beard. I think that's the analog, or the contrast to your thick hair, is I can just grow a massive beard.
Yeah.
But I want to fall in love. if that's the only even silly thing that I do, and my GM was fantastic. He wrote the whole thing for me, and I was able to lean into it. And when it came time for those big story beats where my the apple of my eye was captured, that made me invest more than any sort of level up, power system, anything like that. And that translates to Degenesis as well. So that mode of thinking is extremely helpful for me as a writer, as I know you are too. You wear the author hat quite a lot as you're writing things. So you can call it an overactive imagination. My parents have in the past, perhaps. But I only really need a few lines of a prompt or an idea to get my fingers to start typing. For example, my 5-part series, Sworn Duty, earlier in the season of Echoes of Eshaton, was based around the Anabaptists. And I wanted to explore that because I find them fascinating. They're probably one of my favorite cults. I'm not pigeonholing myself to those listening. I have room to expand my brain, but for right now, I dig the Anabaptists. But it was based on that several paragraph inset in The Righteous Fist, Heretics. Yeah. That entire thing, I spent a month and a half just reading it and rereading it and just kind of setting stuff up. And I was like, if I were to stage a raid against these guys that are the antithesis of the Anabaptist neo-gnosis faith, what spider webs from that? And it became kind of easier and easier because you had kind of built that world for me. And so most of that text was just badass flavoring, describing the scions of Nile. And I had fun filling the rest, looking through the eyes, as I said, of someone who would raid the bakery. So do you have any experiences like that? Any stories that stand out as you were making the game that helped spiderweb into something else?
Well, I tend to write. There's two modes of writing that I follow. The one is a very intuitive one where I just get hammered like crazy. And I literally can spend the whole night just typing random sentences into my Google Drive and then look at that the next morning and be fully ashamed of the bullshit that I put together. But sometimes there are golden nuggets in there, and then you do an editing pass and the stuff is just like right. And then other stuff I really ponder about for a very long time. I make like really thorough notes, and I really want to build up a certain mood or a certain tension, and I spent more time chewing over the story than actually writing it. And then the process of writing, once the outline is written out, is relatively quick and almost automated. Like I just sit down and punch it into the keyboard and it's over, and suddenly there's a huge amount of text there. And it really, building the network of information comes from, I don't know, like I do think that the fact that the story has always been so tremendously big and had so many moving parts that it's something that I constantly have to think about in the back of my head. Like, how does this particular thing affect the next thing? And like, what if I move this piece of domino over here? How will it affect, like, what type of chain reaction will it cause if I don't pay attention to what else I've also written? So it's a lot of going back and forth and even double checking the shit that I've come up with over the years, Yeah. So you have to be careful, otherwise you lean out too far out of the window, and then somebody is like, he doesn't pay attention anymore. He's getting old.
and then that way somebody finds a piece of secret art hidden in the Discord or on the website at 2 p.m. in the afternoon Central Time, and that's how that cascades.
Oh my God, that was the funniest shit ever. Because like I haven't updated the website in I think 15, 16 months. So I was like completely out of it. I went into the back end. I just wanted to update the story. Just check it for 2 minutes if everything is all right, if I did everything right, if all the paragraphs are right, everything. I wanted to take it offline. I checked the Discord. I see the link already posted. I checked the web traffic on the site, and there's like 8 people reading on it, like within 2 minutes. And I was like, oh, fuck this crap. This is bullshit. Like this is not going to work out. So I can't like surprise anyone with that tomorrow anymore.
But here's the thing, and I can leave this out to kind of leave the air of mystery for you. People were and Avocado. I don't know. I can't remember his real Kyle. Kyle was your best friend in that scenario. He said, "Oh yeah, this is just 4D chess." He just wanted to make sure y'all were still paying attention to the website. So he did you a massive favor there. I can speak to that.
Nice.
So speaking of spider webbing and thinking about, so the long and short of it, I had this thought while you were speaking: write drunk, edit sober.
Yeah.
Is that kind of a wrap up for that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the most liberating ways of writing, because you like when you're sober, you have the tendency to not say the things the way you think them. You tend to overthink them. You tend to overanalyze them. You tend to censor yourself in a way. Um, and I do not think that that is the case when you're completely hammered and under the influence. You just write whatever comes to your brain and you put it on paper, and then going in the next day, you can still edit stuff out that you don't like, but like there's some substance there, and it has the honesty of a child talking to you. So
Right.
It's a very
It's your inner child after all.
absolutely. And there were many moments in the past when I was surprised about the shit that I came up with. Like where I'd sit there the next morning and read the stuff, and I'd be like, what the fuck was going on in my head? Like I don't even understand how I got to that conclusion, you know?
And then you see the half empty bottle of vodka 6 more times over, and there you go.
Yeah. But Black Atlantic was one of those really massive drunk experiences. Like I wrote that book completely butt blasted. Like I was so hammered day and night until that thing was finished, because it was such a tour de force. I had to go through the whole book in 3 months, and I literally did all the writing completely drunk, all the editing completely sober in the morning, then getting drunk again, continuing to write. It was quite an experience.
It was the vicious cycle of the sepsis, it sounds like.
Yeah.
There are many ways for things to spiderweb, whether it's, by getting drunk, getting butt blasted, as you said, at night, or, just speaking with friends, speaking with other influences, outside, even maybe outside the artistic community that kind of inspire you. And I know that you've taken inspiration a lot from nature as well. You've been kind of apt to unplug from social media for long stretches at a time, go on retreats to kind of recharge your batteries, cleanse your head. I do want to ask, when you take this inspiration from nature or otherwise, what types of terrain, and as an addendum, what types of people usually offer the biggest head cleanse or the biggest inspiration for you?
I mean, okay, let me ask you a different question. Why do you think there is no fiction out there that reads like a Charles Bukowski story? Like I think that will be my first question. Why is there no fiction that deals with real human introspection and with real human defeat? I do think it's a hole in the fiction market. Fiction really often just does one thing, and that's fiction. And so what am I inspired by? I'm inspired by human tragedy. Like human tragedy really gives me the right material to work with, so to speak. It's like Lego blocks. So like I do feel like I get more mileage out of putting my nose into a war novel like All Quiet on the Western Front than actually reading fiction. I've always tried to get my inspirational sources from areas that have nothing to do with the stuff that I'm actually doing. Like for example, my friends hate me because all the movies I watch are French drama. Like I refuse to watch anything else but French drama. It's like gut-wrenching drama. And my wife hates it, my friends hate it, and they think I'm stupid and crazy, but it's the only thing that really interests me. Sometimes Australian drama as well, but French drama.
Yes, there was one that you'd mentioned. It was a period piece, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but it was something that you'd mentioned.
Snowtown Murder.
Yes, that's what it was.
Yeah, Snowtown. I think the movie title is Snowtown, but it's about the Snowtown murders. Australian cinema.
So, cinema and human drama aside, because I think that's well cataloged, and I appreciate you expanding on that, because it's always good. You mentioned Lego blocks, building blocks for things that just make the stories even more apparent, and begging and borrowing from different sets or different pieces to make something entirely new. Is there anything else based on terrains or landscapes that you find particularly insightful?
Funny, I really do not respond to landscapes at all. I can walk through a forest and not notice that I'm in a forest at all. I'm a character driven guy. I like character studies more than landscapes, so to speak. I also don't think that I'm particularly good at describing landscapes the way I can describe character motivation. I think if I would break down my strengths, landscape is not one of them. I can capture a certain mood, but I'm not really good to lose myself in the details of that mood.
Yeah, and the reason I ask about landscapes, and maybe you can speak to this, and if it seems like more of a hollow question, just I'd be interested to know anything that you'd be able to offer. But there's a lot of detailed maps in Degenesis, and that's why I bring it up. It gives Degenesis that great sense of scale and that scope that I mentioned. And I know certain TTRPG players love hex crawls. They love that number crunching, and they love that very tightly defined play. And some people don't. They like the looser boundaries to not have to spend a lot of mental energy planning their expeditions. But I think the main European continent in Degenesis has a nice balance of both. It has realistic distances between known locations and described locations, and it even has the more loosely defined uncharted wilderness areas. So was this balance intentional part of your world design to kind of establish this sense of place, or was it just a natural consequence of creating interesting places for people to live and reside in?
Let me go back to the origins of Degenesis, which is like 2003, and Chris and I sitting together and creating the game for the first time. And like our main goal back then, and that was really the one thing that drove us to even do this, was that there wasn't any post-apocalyptic fiction that was centered around Europe and Africa in a far future. That was like the main idea behind it, the main drive behind like keeping it based on Europe. And the more we developed it, the less we felt interested in other areas. The more we felt like we need this really contained universe where everything's happening in relative close proximity to one another, but still far enough to like give people the opportunity to travel. So it really feels like it's a dying habitat. It's like a smaller and smaller world, and the rest of the earth never really mattered to us in the development of Degenesis. We really wanted to have like a play field that feels like you can overlook it relatively easily without creating distances that are so wide and so far away from one another that they won't be influential. Like if something happens in this magical empire that's 8,000 miles away, who cares? But
Right.
if something happens in Britain, it affects everything else that is in close proximity to Britain, which is
because the magic of that previous world, it allows it to not matter at all. The distance is basically a secondary, even tertiary concern at that point.
Exactly.
If you have magical sending and you have scrying and you have all these things that allow those distances to become basically non-existent, magic portals and stuff, I that makes a lot of sense. I understand that. So yeah, it seemed like intentional part of the world design based on the vacuum of apocalyptic fiction that you were trying to fill, which makes a lot of sense.
Well, it's not only the vacuum; it's also the fact that we knew Europe pretty well. Like us as two 24-year-old guys that have only visited the US at that point, like maybe once or twice before. We wouldn't be able to make a game about the US. It's like it would have been impossible, but Europe was so much closer. It was our home, so to speak. Like we grew up with French people, we grew up with German people, we grew up with like Austrians and Swiss people and all these crazy guys that hang out in Europe. And there weren't many Americans around when we were growing up. So like that was just not something that we felt like we can actually honestly tackle if you want it like that. Like it's at some point, like I wouldn't write about certain topics that I have absolutely no clue about, like unless I do my research about that. And back when we started, we just knew enough about Europe to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, and that translates very well. And I say that as somebody who plays in America, and I chat with Unpossible and Max of the Ryan, who are in the server, and we get lost in that world because while it has a sense of place for people who are from that area, it has an even more foreign and otherworldly appeal, so to speak, to somebody outside of Europe and even Africa. So I love that aspect of it, and that really, really makes a lot of sense to, write what you know. And because you've written what you know, that genuineness comes across so much more effortlessly in the fiction than anything else.
But you have to be careful though. Like I absolutely refuse to reference modern day locations. Like if you've read Degenesis attentively, like there's barely ever any reference to the past. Like it's so far removed from what is standing around today. I mean, like I think the only visual cue that we have in Primal Punk is the Eiffel Tower. Like that's like the only throwback to the past. Like I was really adamant in the beginning of the Rebirth edition to eradicate all traces of our modern day civilization and like come up with a completely new way of how people live in the future. So no cars, no buildings that resemble a certain thing, no old city names, unless they somehow in a far corner survived or moved from one place to the other. But I really wanted to just use the continent and the feeling of the continent's cultures to translate the world without ever delving into the nationhood of Europe, into the different social stratas that developed over the last couple of years.
Avoiding well-defined boundaries, just really focusing on that, focusing on the margins, the marginal, the merging of cultures. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that translates well. And it's another follow-up to one of these questions, and we touched on it earlier, but I did want to just say this on air and read the question out loud, or at least the statement out loud. Some TTRPG settings aren't for everyone. Degenesis has a lot of mature themes and is quite grisly as written, but in my opinion, you and the SixMoreVodka team have been really respectful to players' sensibilities by not beating them over the head with thematic disclaimers or apologizing for the world you've created, valuing the marginal. I think this treats consumers much more like adults than anything else. We kind of touched on the disconnect between people who view every TTRPG system as something that can be tailor-made versus, people who are willing to make their own fun and abide by the world rules that you and the team have created. So let me ask you a more blunt question here. Have TTRPGs become too sanitized or watered down for mass appeal that the essence of what the game designers set out to make is lost?
I wouldn't be able to answer. I haven't touched a TTRPG outside of Degenesis for 20 years. Like, I don't even know what's on the market or what's relevant today or what's hip or what people are fawning over. I'm also not interested in that. Like, I really do not do any research in that respect out of one reason. I with my team and with my company, I want to do and create games that are appealing and not appeasing. And I do believe that the only way to be appealing is to be authentic. So you have to do something that is interesting to you. You have to write something that you would like to read. And so my taste obviously is coming through here. Like, this is like Degenesis is the game that I would like to play. That's why it's written this way. I wanna read about that stuff. I wanna think about that stuff. I wanna like put my nose into the meta plot. I wanna find out about the people. And I've never considered what a fan might say if he picks up the book. It's absolutely irrelevant to me because I do not believe that one can make entertainment for the masses. You can only make entertainment for yourself. And if you're genuine about it, then people will eventually pick that up and say, hey, this guy's cool because he's at least true to himself. If it's ever going to be a big success, it's questionable. But, like if I compare Miley Cyrus to Nick Cave is not successful, but he's still the best lyricist out there. So why would I like sacrifice what I really believe in just to get more readers or viewers? All we ever asked for in the past was to get just enough people to break even so we don't make losses. That's like, I think not a big thing to ask for. We've made everything free so far, and we're pushing the brand further to be able to produce more things for the brand because we really believe the IP should live on, maybe not as a TTRPG, but like at least in its, contextualized novel form.
I'm glad to hear you say that because that's the main and only focal reason I decided to start Echoes of Eshaton. You had all those excerpts and that wealth of information across, 6+ source books at this point, probably more. I may be off count there a little bit, but that was something that was really important to me to say, if there's podcasts that I listen to that tell stories, and they're all based in, they all have a bigger sense of whimsy and a kind of a more juvenile tone. I want something a little bit grittier. Well, nobody's doing it. I guess I'm going to have to do it. So that's the thing that has been the driving factor in me making this. And I'm so glad that other people drop a reaction in Discord. I love just the 60 people that I have that get to listen to it. and it's just so much fun for me to continue to do that. So any other creatives out there, I think facing down the same thing, take it from somebody from 60 plus listeners to a creative director with thousands of fans around the world. You have to do what you love. And that's what I'm going to keep doing. So thank you for your encouragement. I appreciate that.
And I mean, that's what attracted me to your podcast to begin with. If it was, like if it was watered down, or if it was misunderstood, or if it was misrepresentative of Degenesis, I think I would have not reached out. It was the fact that I felt like you understood the world to a degree that I, wanted it to be understood. And that is very attractive. On a different note, I mean, also the bread and butter of my company is to produce appeasing work every day. Like we service clients all over the world. We have everybody in entertainment pretty much coming to us. You can name anyone in the industry that comes and buys pictures from us. So we have to produce very appeasing work all the time, because in general, big companies do not want to offend anybody. So they're coming to us with like whatever kind of property, and we like develop it for them. And there is no authenticity in it. There's no way of personalized expression. And so you're in a situation that you're running a successful company and you're producing all this service material, but you never have a voice. Like you never have your own voice. And that's why Degenesis exists. It's there to create a voice for myself and the team to do whatever we are really wanting to do, without editorial oversight, without focus testing, without, being shut down or being told, no, you can't say this, no, you can't do that, no, you can't, paint this or that. Mm-hmm. But because it is our only outlet of true freedom.
Yeah. So would you slap a concept on that, sort of a this versus this? You're the visionary, but also the hermit at the same time, right? The forward facing and then the behind the scenes.
Yeah. On myself, you mean?
Yeah, or just in general, just kind of the whole notion of the appease versus appeal nature of things.
I mean, like my job is definitely schizophrenic. I mean, on the one hand, you're running a highly sought after outsourcing company that provides a service that like a lot of people need, which is creating great characters, franchisable images, marketing art, etc. And on the other hand, like we're a studio trying to find its own way of being independent and creating its own independent material. So we're a tiny publishing house that wants to put ideas out and build and grow its own audience, and has to compete against a market, or in a market where the regular way of handling fans or the needs of fans is to just give them whatever they ask for. And we're refusing to do that. Like we're just not the right people to be even remotely interested in doing that, because we already do that as our main job. Like we already are doing everything the client requires us to do. So we're not going to do that in our free time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense, and we're all the better for it. You take feedback for sure, but the creative vision stands alone. Yeah. And I speaking of vision, this will be a terrible segue, but this flows into something a little bit more on the writing side of things as well. You talk about the notion of concepts heavily in the Exalter supplement book, and how combinations of several types of these ideas start to form concepts of loyalty, chance, dogma, destiny, and revenge even. So what is this, and if I'm misquoting, because I read it cover to cover, but if I'm misquoting, correct me here. What is the sort of immutable nature of these concepts mean? They're on a spectrum, but what does the immutable nature of these concepts mean for writers looking to develop or expand on a character's backstory or motivation? Can you give any advice to writers based on that?
You mean as a writer to be influenced by the concepts to a degree to like make better character studies?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, like let me just do a curveball here. The concepts for me were never more than or the constellations in a sense were never more than Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak coming together in a garage and creating.
Okay.
Like sometimes
the yin and the yang.
Exactly. Sometimes the stars align. And I had situations that were very similar in life, where you meet a partner or you have a friendship that is building up, and you see that all all the factors are influencing one another, and they're leading to a certain result. And these results are always either, based around chance or ambition or love and affection. And that's how that whole idea came about. The influence of the archetypes on a specific character can be as broad or as definitive as you want them to be as a writer. Like, I do not hinder myself to the extent that I'm completely analytical about what everybody's concept is. I just know what the direction of the character is that I'm taking him in, and on that imaginative spindle, I'm trying to like move him around within the parameters of his concept.
I love that explanation. I mean, you said, would you equate spindle to spectrum as you understand it? Okay. Yeah. So, you mentioned spindle and spectrum, those being kind of synonymous in a way. I think that there's a trope in storytelling, and I try to avoid it, and I fall prey to it. I'm still, I would consider myself kind of amateur novice in certain ways, but there are those tropes that you hold to so fastidiously, so carefully, that you sort of box yourself in when you're telling a story. And, when you're writing something week to week, like Echoes of Eshaton, that's especially dangerous because you want things to develop and grow synergistically with everybody else. I decided a few weeks ago or a few episodes ago, I wanted to have a party, and I wanted them to be able to play off of each other in certain ways. Who's going to hold a secret? Who's going to want to get to the bottom of that secret? Well, obviously a chronicler and a judge. Chroniclers are by their nature very mysterious. Judges are very by the book. They ask questions. They're going to have to do follow-ups for their paperwork, their bureaucracy that they have to fill out.
Yeah.
So I just, as a passing word to other writers or people, even GMs running your own game, look at those synergies. If things start really stacking up, one after the other, and things just feel so out of balance, they probably are on that spectrum. That's the only advice that I would have to offer, I guess.
Well, I do think that people have a tendency to behave in a spectrum themselves of how extreme their reaction to their outside world will be. And I think that is the key part to understanding the concepts proper. It's a spectrum of emotions in which you solve problems, and some people solve them a certain way and other people solve them a different way. So but there's still room for the character to go off on a deep end or make a detour or be one step away from making a bad decision, and that is the very important part. Even the best guy is not incorruptible, and keeping that in mind is a key aspect of becoming or doing good character studies. I feel you have to believe in the strengths of your character, but you also have to believe in the weaknesses of their being, and then explore that and see what side wins, instead of just cookie cutter saying, okay, this guy is evil and he will stay evil, and all he will ever do is evil, and every motivation that he will ever have is evil, because that's not how life works. Most people are not evil. Even evil guys love their families sometimes. It's very one-dimensional to not give a character enough room to respond to an outside input in a different manner than just this one particular way.
Right. And there's this, it's kind of cheesy, so bear with me, but there's this cheesy old saying that has some weight. Maybe you've heard of it. Inside you, there are two wolves. One is good and one is evil. Which one wins? So it's which one wins? Well, the answer is it's the one you feed. So something to consider.
That is a really good one.
Oh yeah. Hey, borrow it.
No, because I had it's funny because it reminded me of a dream that I had a couple of years ago where I took a wolf in to my house, and it was black and white, and I started feeding it, and the wolf was black, and then the whole house was turning black because I was feeding it.
Whoa. Man, so, did we just have a metaphysical moment here? What's going on?
I don't know. I do believe in synchronicity, and I do believe in symbols that are just repetitive, very repetitive in terms of how how we function as a society, as a human race. You know, like there's just things that are like popping out of nowhere, and sometimes a lot of people have the same idea at the same time.
Have you ever seen the movie Pacific Rim?
Yeah,
it's not French. It's not French drama, but have you seen Pacific Rim?
I did on a plane flight to the U.S.
There's a brief line in there, and it's also cheesy, but I like the writing a little bit, and the movie clips along really well. But it's spoken by one of those Germanic scientists who's working with the American Charlie Day, that comedian. Yeah. He says, math is the closest we'll get to understanding the metaphysical or some such. And he says, math is the handwriting of God. And I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool line of writing. I can respect that. That's cool.
Yeah, but that's the line of every cosmic geometrist, you know, like I do feel they are all like into that particular line of thinking. But I thought you were going to quote, "We're going to cancel the apocalypse" or something.
Not until after Clan Wars releases.
Okay.
I have a kind of a what came first, the chicken or the egg question for you.
Yeah.
Even in those early days of being inspired by the RPGs that you were playing and while you were working on the art related to them, you've mentioned having to condense almost entire stories or even scenarios into a singular artistic work that tells that story. Speaking directly to Degenesis and your work with Christian, how much of the art of Degenesis has stemmed from post-apocalyptic stories or vice versa?
So let me go back again in time. In 2003, I was an aspiring illustrator. I just wasn't successful. I wanted to make a career, but like I wasn't getting jobs. I was in Germany, and it was impossible for me to, get jobs overseas. There was no industry here in Germany that could support a guy like me. And as I tried to, spread my portfolio around and get clients in, and this was, like really early days, like you would send a JPEG of a megabyte to a client and like he wouldn't be able to open the email for the whole day, So, in those particular days, I was like just really hoping to spend my time artistically and creatively and do something that is meaningful. And when Chris came around and we decided to do Genesis, my main goal was just to draw the way I would like to see designs. I wanted to draw the things that I would like to pick up in a bookstore. I wanted to draw the things that would inspire me as an artist. So I really think a lot of the influence that you can see in Degenesis artistically is me trying to entertain myself, me trying to draw the things that I like drawing. So what do I like drawing? I like people in rubber suits. What do I like drawing? I like people with floppy hats and big coats. Like what do I like drawing? I like these barbarian, crude guys with big swords and nose rings and tattoos on their forehead. Like there's like a lot of everything that you see in Degenesis is stuff that I like drawing, because nothing is worse for an artist than to sit there on a job and have to draw something that you don't like. There's nothing that kills the soul more. And if you have to do it for the money anyway, then you just try to get it over with. And I do think Degenesis is a reflection of what I find tasteful, what I find interesting to look at, what I get like this. I've read a bunch of feedback. Oh, Marko is like doing this post-apocalyptic game and everybody is beautiful. Yeah, so what? It took me 40 years to draw beautiful people.
Not everybody. Has anybody seen Joshua? Shout out Joshua.
Yeah, but like you get what I mean. Like it's just,
I do.
Such a weird complaint. Like who gives a shit? Like it's me appreciating beauty, and I enjoy painting beauty. I don't enjoy painting something that I'm not enjoying. So
right.
Yeah. Why do I not enjoy it?
No. I was gonna say, and that breaking away from tradition and doing beautiful things, that dynamic sense comes from Bernie Hogarth. Is that right? The dynamic anatomy that you had worked with?
It takes you a couple of years to get really good at anatomy, and it takes another couple of years to draw beautiful women. So like, I'm not going to apologize for drawing beautiful women. It's just like it's not even such a nothing burger of a complaint,
I personally wouldn't expect you to anyway. I can recognize a beautiful woman when I see one.
That's good.
So
that's good.
So we'll change gears here, not drastically, but I do want to just touch on Clan Wars a little bit. This is going to be my first mention of Clan Wars on Echoes of Eshaton, and now that I've got you here, I kind of want to make it official. Let everybody know who's not a Degenesis fan who's already listening to be kind of cool. So your newest iteration of the Degenesis IP is Clan Wars, an asymmetric, semi-cooperative, tactical scale skirmish board game. Yeah. It's going to have a massive story-driven campaign across the front lines of the Black Lung and the Protectorate. It's going to feature characters new and old, playing in story missions on tactical battle maps. Fans like me can expect more lore, more art, character progression, dynamic events, and a host of enemies to slaughter. As long as I've personally been in the Degenesis Discord server, it has seemed as if Clan Wars was this sort of ephemeral thing on your mind before it got announced. Did you always know that you wanted to branch out from the RPG with this?
Okay, so I'll spoil some beans for you. So when we dropped the mic in October 21 and decided we're going to end the RPG line, we had
a million voices cried out in anguish.
Yeah. You should have seen what we like the emails that we got. It was funny. I was like, where were you guys before? Like, why are you crying right now? We've been telling you for 2 years we cannot do this forever if you don't support us. Anyways, so we dropped the mic, and then I think the first 2 months we just went on a rampage. I wanted to finish Orkin, so I sat down. I just wrote the first book all the way to final. Started working on the second book. We just needed to get like some break from Degenesis, like even if it was just a small one, but like it was substantial enough just to like cut our ties with it for a minute and not think about it for a while. And then January rolled around, January 2022, and Liam and I, we have the tendency to just brainstorm all the time. Like our Slack chat is an endless brainstorming session. And we send each other news articles. We look at things that we find interesting. And then we start talking. And as we talk, we start developing things. And then we started developing more things. And suddenly we're like developing one IP after the other. Every week there was like a new target. Okay, let's try this. Okay, let's try this. And so we came up with like a bunch of obscure shit. Like we really like filled a lot of folders. And while we were talking, I was making drawings. And we really felt like, okay, like there's like some really good stuff here. What are we doing next? And then while we were doing that, I was starting to experiment with 2D animation because I always wanted to do classic 2D animation. I was like I was very much influenced by it as a child. So I started teaching myself animation in the event, like if the eventuality would come along that we might go into an animation direction for the studio or for any of our IPs. I at least wanted to know how to get a grasp on it. And then we started developing a plot for a potential Degenesis animation. And while we were doing that, I was also reaching out to a lot of people on the side, and I hit up my old friend Paolo Parente, who I know for over 20 years, who's an artist who did the Dust 1947 game. And I wanted to send him the art books originally, just as a nice present, and tell him, hey, I'm thinking of you. How you doing? And we hooked up on the phone, and then we started talking, and he asked me why I never did a board game of Degenesis. And I was like, because I don't know how to make a board game. Like I have no idea how to start even, like I don't know a factory that could produce one. I don't know what goes into it, what the costs are. And he's like, but you know me, like I've been doing board games all my life. Like you should do a board game. I was like, are you serious? But like, this is going to blow a hole in my budget, like the size of Jupiter. And he's like, no, it's not that expensive. Like you just have to trust me. And then he literally broke everything down in terms of cost. And he explained the entire production pipeline and what to do and how to kickstart the project. And I started, rolling the idea in my head. And then I went to Liam and I was like, Liam, are we going to do a board game?
Quick interjection. About what year is this that you're talking with Liam about the board game?
Oh, it's like 2022. It's like
okay.
In March, I think. Like it's just over a year ago. And then he's like, oh no, but like I don't know anything about board games. So it's like, okay, like we need to call somebody that knows something about board games. And then we called Renard, and Renard was like, okay, I'll do it. And then Liam and him sat together and started developing this thing. And at the beginning, I'm going to be completely honest here. I know nothing about board games. Anything that is more complex than chess, and I lose my attention immediately. Like I'm not a classic board game. So I was like, okay, like let's run this in the background. Maybe it's gonna work out, maybe not. Let's start doing these minis. I wasn't taking it really seriously for the first 3 months, but then the minis started rolling in. We saw the samples, we saw the sculpts. Everything was coming in from China. I was like, holy shit, this is looking really good. This is looking way better than I expected. And then the guys started pitching the game to me, and then it was like, okay, like I don't know if this is good or bad. I need to play test it. And then we literally play tested it, and that was when I realized, okay, fuck, this is gonna be fun. This is gonna be fun. Like I'm convinced now, so like that is the most important part.
And playtesting was recent as just a couple weeks ago at this point. And this podcast will air probably towards the end of May. So anybody listening who's new, that gives you a good idea of what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. So everything has been relatively recent in terms of like getting a feel for the final game. Even though there was a lot of built up, like we were designing the dashboards already, designing the cards, designing the packaging. We were already like in the nitty gritty of like, hey, what is this product going to feel like? But nobody ever actually sat down and played it. So we were looking at like single items the entire time that we were working on. And then you're like moving vectors around and you're looking at, like how do I represent a die with a symbol the best way? And you never get to actually play it. And then once we saw all the components come together at the table just a couple of weeks ago, we realized, holy shit, like this is actually super engaging.
Yeah.
It's absolutely quick to learn, but it's so deep because like it opens up so many character interactions that are not visible on first sight. So you start the game off, you're like literally you just got the basics down, but then as you're stumbling into the basics, you see cascading options at every turn, and you're like, holy shit, like actually feels like the Degenesis without it being the Degenesis. So like I was very, very impressed, and they really managed to get me on their side in terms of production, and I'm absolutely proud of what they're building. So like it's a very, very cool game, and I can't wait to finally release it, of course.
That's so encouraging to hear. And, just to follow up on that, because as I said, I'm a member in the Discord server. Anybody who's listening, you can tag me or mention me. I'm Data Jack in the Discord server. But I did want to say, as far as the miniature reveals, SixMoreVodka has never skimped or cut corners on production value and quality. And with the recent miniature figurine reveals on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter at SixMoreVodka, the case is no different than with Clan Wars. So, based on that previous answer, I wanted to ask, just as in terms of production pipeline, which you mentioned, for anybody else who's aspiring to do anything creative, did you feel like this type of game hinged on the same quality production as the RPG? I feel the answer is yes, but there's a quick follow-up. Were there new 3D printing technologies available to you that kind of opened this new realm for SixMoreVodka to bring in Clan Wars into the fully realized vision your team wanted?
Okay, so I think this is there's a lot to unpack here. Like I do think I would have not been as confident as I am if we didn't have Paulo on board. He was like the crucial cog in the machine. Like if he wasn't there, I think this whole thing would have been a far bigger mess or a bigger blunder, and maybe have not ever come to fruition. But he was so hands-on from literally day one, taking over all types of consultation for us, bringing us together with the sculptors, organizing like the entire workflow, sitting there, art directing the 3D sculptors, helping us out to find the right person to produce the resin models, setting up the tooling in the factory in China. Like there was like it was just so much smooth sailing up to this point that we could just focus in on quality.
Okay.
Like our job in all of this was just to produce great art and give it to him so he could turn it into 3D. His thing was like, Marko, I want to manifest your world in 3 dimensions because I think your audience deserves it. That was his line of
beautiful
pitching.
Thank you, Paulo. Thank you.
So without him, it would have not worked out. And with him, it's been really a very, very smooth experience, which allows us to like push the boundaries of quality because we've been testing stuff out with him for a year now. Like we're calling him up when we want to make changes to the game. We're looking at the pre-manufactured miniatures that just brought over from China last week. We're making final calls on where the tooling needs to be improved, and he has been like nothing but genuinely helpful in this entire process. And he helps us because by nature, I'm a very risk-averse person. I think I mentioned this before. I would never announce something that I know I cannot keep. I don't give promises out if I know that I won't be able to keep them. And with this thing in particular, I know that the final quality will live up to the hype that I'm building at the moment, because it's been such a good experience on our end, and the results that we see coming into the office are so mind-blowing. So I really can't wait to like reveal more, to be honest.
Hey, you're not the only one. SixMoreVodka, accept no imitations. That's what I say.
Thank you.
I do have one last question about Clan Wars.
Yeah.
You gave a brief summary of the story of Degenesis to that same YouTube live art stream I mentioned earlier, Evil Jar, and you said, with a cigarette casually lit in your hands, smoke billowing from the top of the end, God falls on the planet, realizes mankind has been fucking around with the Garden of Eden, and has to reset it. Could you give another summary here on Echoes of Eshaton for the story or overarching themes of Clan Wars, or are you afraid to pull a Liam and say too much?
No, I think Clan Wars is the accumulation of all the storylines coming together, and we're continuing where we left off. So basically, it is this is your civilization against tribal people game. This is like we're coming back to take our land away from you that you've stolen from us over the centuries. Like this is a revenge story, and I really think it can only be told with the great motivations of the clans, and that's why the lore matters, and that's why this new story that like leaked yesterday is very meaningful. Because it's all built up. It's all historical build up. Whether or not you use it in game doesn't matter. Like it's not gonna influence the excitement of the game itself. But what is exciting is what leads to this conflict. And I do think that we have a really strong story here that needs to be told.
That's awesome. And I'm anticipating, on the RP side of things, even in the in-between segments of combat, which is going to be the fast-paced, frenetic type of stuff that you've already experienced in your early test sessions, I'm anticipating some more deeply disturbing character studies that arise from choices made during Clan Wars campaigns. Fans maybe can expect some gritty portraits of ruin and regret from survivors in these battles. Similar to, like you mentioned, it's like a post-apocalyptic version of All Quiet on the Western Front. Those character stories can be understood and expounded upon as you continue to play Clan Wars.
What's going to be exciting for the players to uncover is that death is certain. There is no way back. If you die, you die. And your roster is crucial. So who's on your roster is, the team's effort of bringing more people in on to the roster. So like you're basically playing the game, starting out. I mean, if your thing is airing in May, I think I can already talk about this. You're starting out the game with 4 characters out of the box. It's Timur, Echo, Pluto, and Feuerbach. So you only have the choice of these 4, right? But as you progress through the missions, you can decide to like fork paths and go onto a recruitment mission to get another character onto your roster, which can then, for example, replace this battalion. So like you unlock the Helvetic, and then the player that played this battalion is now playing the Helvetic in the next mission. So you're replacing a high-end grenadier sniper type character for the only healer on the roster. It might give you firepower, but suddenly nobody on the team can like get patched up again. So what does that mean? It is a huge balancing act for the players to decide who they're going to bring in on the roster. And now the clue comes from every mission starting out with an intel phase. You can only go into a mission if you're going through that intel phase, and that intel phase requires the players to barter for information so they can prepare for the mission. If they go in blind, they might lose their entire team. But if they barter for information, they're actually making the hostile stronger. So they know what's going on, and they can make a more educated guess on how to compose their squad, but they just buff the hostile at the same time. So the intel mechanic is a very, very elegant way of like really balancing out the upcoming mission and creating very unfavorable gameplay for the players that they have to then deal with because they bartered too far.
That is a stellar explanation, and that is stellar gameplay design, in my opinion. Is that why there's a recent teaser that just came out today, and I saw Echo in the background of the silhouette? I'm going to just assume that he's one of those Intel-based characters.
Exactly. You just like nailed it. Echo is actually the only character on the entire roster who gets intel for free and doesn't barter anything to the hostile. So if you bring Echo, you have the best scout on the team.
I am so looking forward to playing this. It's going to be amazing. And I thank you for the small reveals now. They may or may not be spoilers towards the end of May. And I will say, just, apart from the recording here, if you'd like to listen back to this back to front with the entire team, I'll have the audio here towards the end of the day that I can clean up.
Don't worry.
Okay.
It's literally me who has. Yeah, don't worry. Like this is information that should go out.
That's not going to be found by accident in a Discord server somehow.
And we're so proud of that mechanic. The only reason why we haven't like blasted more out is because we just really want to make sure that everything is polished before we showcase stuff. So like we're just so eager to do it right, and we're such perfectionists on our end that we just want to have the ample time to make last minute changes, fix a bunch of balancing, polish some stuff up. We like there was stuff in the alpha where we were like, okay, like we can still make this better. Let us work on this for another week to like just improve this. But it's nothing game breaking. It's just our way of like wanting to polish before we release.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's always well appreciated. Marko, I've got a few rapid fire questions for you, and then I'll let you get back to focusing on the raging creative storm between your ears and with your team. All right?
All right. Go for it.
All right. Who would win in a fight? Vampire Spider-Man or Blade?
Vampire Spider-Man, because he lifts 10 tons.
Okay. So does the answer change if it's just regular Peter Parker Spider-Man?
No, Peter Parker would still win because he lifts 10 tons. Like the guy is super strong. Like I know this because when I was a 10-year-old, I had a Marvel comic that listed like all the strength values.
Upper limits of strength values? I love it. Amazing. Character.
And I remember Spider-Man lifting 10 tons. Hulk was at 100 tons. He was the only one in the 100-ton range.
How many copies of your Massive Black Studio Ideation DVD do you think are still floating around?
Oh my God! How the fuck did you like find out about that? Like, I don't even know. Like, I really do not know. This was such a weird experience. Like, we did this without any plan. We just dropped it out. I don't know, like 1,500, 2,000. I don't know. Like, I really don't know.
All right, so eBay snipers, get your keyboards ready.
Sometimes old friends hit me up and they like just sent me a cover image of that DVD and they're laughing and sending me smiling.
Hey, I found this in a bargain bin. What's this doing here? What's going on?
Remember when that was like hip to have a DVD? Like
absolutely.
That's the funniest part. Like we don't need that shit at all anymore.
Oh man, I've got my amplifier and my surround sound set up. We're gonna go watch a DVD later. This is gonna be hot shit, man.
Yeah.
All right. What is your favorite word? Curses and swears don't count.
Oh my God, like I have one every other week, but now I can't remember a single one. Probably I like the word collision. Yeah.
Mine's caustic. Both C words, by the way.
Yeah. Caustic is good. Caustic is really good.
I know you've massively cut back, but what was your favorite flavor of Red Bull?
Oh, I only drank the normal one. I never had a different flavor.
Okay. OG Red Bull. Got it.
OG Red Bull. Yeah. But like I haven't touched a Red Bull since 2014 because I was really addicted to that shit. For 4 years, I literally drank 6 cans a day. It's just like it's disgusting. Absolutely.
Your kidneys were writing their local congressman. That's crazy.
my God, like I literally, like I drank so much Red Bull that Red Bull sponsored me at one point. I remember in the early days of SixMoreVodka, they were like bringing pallets in. Like our kitchen was stacked with Red Bull all the way to the ceiling. Yeah.
All right. So, favorite character from the Moloch source book?
I don't have one. I can't decide between my children. It's not a fair question.
All right. Fair enough. Last question. Would you do a voice in an episode of Echoes of Eshaton if I asked you nicely?
Sure, if you can, bear it. If it's good enough for you, I don't know. Like,
Oh, it's perfectly fine. I think it would add a level of excitement and dynamism to a few certain key episodes. So I'll reach back out to you on that.
Yeah. No problem at all.
But Marko Djurdjevic, thank you for your time. And I think I speak for the entire Degenesis community when I say we can't wait to see what you and the team at SixMoreVodka have planned next. Thank you.
Thank you, Cooper.
Horace the Kid with the Justician theme.
Yeah.
And he worked me up my season 2 intro music. Can I email it to you if you want to listen to it really quick? All right, so you are the first person outside of Max, Horace the Kid, who has heard this. So if it leaks, I'll know who to hunt down and kill.
Yeah, but I don't have friends, don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's super cool. Super cool. I like it. It has like a late 80s British new wave touch to it. Like I like it. Very cool. Very cool. I like your voice. I like your intro a lot. Like I think
Thank
you're
you.
really good. You're such a good speaker, man. Like it's very pleasurable to listen to you.
I appreciate that. I wanted it to be just on the verge of cheese, and I think I accomplished that pretty well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's that's why I said like late 80s British new wave, because it is like late 80s British new wave is always on the verge of cheese. It's super good, but it's also kind of cringy at the same time. So I do appreciate that.